tonight.
Welcome to Roll for Damage, Episode 9, Epic Bases 2.0. Today, we are going to make interchangeable bases. We're starting with our Walmart bottle cap bases filled with hot glue, and we're going to hollow them out. I used an ice pick, but any sharp object with a small diameter would work. I'm going to decorate mine next. Right now I'm cutting out planks for a wood type, and all I'm doing is taking cardstock and scoring it halfway through and not completely, because what I'm going to do is leave the edges attached. That way I just have spaces between for that paint to sink in. And then I'm going to take glue, glue it to the top of the base, and then just let that sit and dry. Now, depending on your hot glue cap, you could either have a concave, a flat, or a bulbous base. I recommend doing a flat, which is putting the exact amount of hot glue in that you need, not more. And if you have too much or not enough and you push down on it, it goes concave, which is a little bit harder for something like this to work, because then you would have to push down into that groove for your cardboard or your cardstock to stick to that bottle cap. But let's continue. So for that base, I already had it hollowed out with my ice pick. Now I'm going to put the various textures on that I want. I'm going to soak it with Elmer's glue. Make sure I get in all the little grooves where your thumbs go to open the bottle. I want to make sure I got all those covered. And I'm just going to dredge it in my dirt. Shake off the excess. Leave that stick in there because you don't want dirt or excess glue to get in that hole and clog that hole up. So leave the stick in there and just set it to dry. You could pull it out right before it dries. It still comes out really easy. So now I'm using the Dollar Tree foam board, and I'm going to use this piece for my stone texture. So I put it down on the foam board. I trace the pattern, used an X-Acto knife to cut out the circle. Now I'm going to take actual utility knife and slice it in half. I was a little bit lopsided, so I had to go back and trim a little different piece. If you have to do this, please be careful as you are playing with a razor. Okay, so peel off the paper on the back, and we're going to hot glue that directly to the top. Now I had some overhang on mine because the top of that cap is slightly smaller than the actual base is. So I just took my X-Acto knife and went back over and just kind of also trimmed it with that bevel in mind. And once again, please be careful. This is a razor. It trims fantastically easy, as you're all aware. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking a ballpoint pen and I'm pressing the stone texture that I want into the rock. I decided to go with more of a pebble cobblestone-ish look rather than a straight dungeon tile, because even though it's a different color, I wanted all my bases to be completely different. So I didn't want a blocky base that would match my wood texture. I wanted it to be a random stone pattern. So obviously, know your limits. Don't press down too hard in the spots that you need it. It's okay if that hole's not there, because we're going to punch that back through from the back side. And just do it gently. Once again, I'm putting a bamboo skewer into it, coating it with glue, and this glue helps stiffen that foam up. I still am going to use acrylic flat black to coat all of them, but I just like that glue there for extra durability. So again, I'm going to coat the side, and I'm only going to roll that side into the dirt. I'm going to make sure I do not get it on the top of my stone, because I don't want that, texture on my stonework. I'm just trying to hide that weird corrugation that the plastic bottle has. Alright, this is back with the wood base top. It's dry. I just flipped it over and used the X-Acto knife to trim it to a circle. And then now I'm just getting it flusher, or more close to the surface. And what you see me doing there is actually putting the two boards that should have been, you have a long board, you have two boards that meet, you have a long board, you have two boards that meet. Well, I just cut those two paths, and now what I'm doing is using my awl to put nail holes. And then I'm going back over those board lines in between that we had cut previously, just to give them a more beveled angle and to let that paint sit deeper. Okay, so this is the trick. We have to put a post into our Mini. This is what's going to allow us to swap bases. So I believe that drill bit is a 5/16. However, it doesn't say on the actual bit, so I can't be positive about it. But I'm fairly certain it's a 5/16, which is the exact same size as that skewer, which is the exact same size as the awl that I had. So I'm using Gorilla Super Glue. I'm using the gel formula just because I like how it gives me a little bit more time to play with it and get things where I need. Alright, so all my bases have been coated. I have my 3 flat black, and I have a yellow one over there, what I'm going to use for lava. So, as on most of my next steps after painting, I am going to do my stone texture with a dark gray. I realized that if I would have just left those in there, this painting process would have been so much easier. So I recommend, while they're drying, make sure with the sand, make sure you pull that bamboo skewer out, just so the stick doesn't get glued inside. And if it does, I'm pretty sure you could get it out there pretty without too much trouble, because it's not super glue, it's school glue. It's not a permanent bond. But it would have made all these jobs a lot simpler if after they dried I had put those skewers back into the bases. So keep that in mind when you're doing these. There I am putting my brown for my mud. I didn't do a dark mud, I just went with a straight mud color for the first coat because I already put a flat black on it, and it was kind of pointless to go back and add that dark brown, which you see me using now on the planks for our tavern tile, or our tavern base. Again, I'm going across the planks to make sure my brush is not falling into those deep channels. I want to skim across those. So always keep that in mind when you're painting with flat lines. Go against the grain per se. And then yeah, you see me, I had to keep playing with it, and I had to do some touch-ups. And like I said, once more, if you would have just left those skewers in there, I would have saved myself the headache of retouching. Now the lava over there is the only time that I've paint opposite. When we do our stone and our wood and basically almost everything we paint, you always start with the darkest color, because that is the shadow. That's the deepest part of that recess. However, with lava, it's a different story. The inside is the hottest part, which would be the yellow, and it slowly turns to orange and red and then black. So we are doing an opposite paint scheme for anything that would be an external light source, or internal, I'm sorry, an internal light source. So I put the yellow paint as the base coat. I went back and put red and realized it was a little bit too red, so I mixed some orange with, or some yellow with it, and made a very light red or dark orange, however you perceive it. This is putting our player through an extra base that I had, and what I'm doing is marking where that actually ends at the base. Now, after I cut this, I wasn't aware that if I had maybe stuck it too late or not far enough in, but what I realized is the permanent marker that I was using couldn't actually get all the way flush to that base, so I had to go back and trim just a little bit off. And here it is in action. How cool is that? Thank you all for watching. Please like, subscribe to my channel. I have more fantastic things coming out. Stay tuned.